Hey everybody, Breakthrough Health and Life Coach Glenn Hattem here. I'm here leading the 1% podcast, and I have a special guest today. And so as I always tell everybody, grab a notepad, grab a pen. There's going to be some nuggets of wisdom that are being mined from this conversation. Probably going to fill up a lot of pages here today. So a lot of pressure on my guests and myself to step up, and let's see what unfolds. But I have Kelli Calabrese here from Flower Mound, Texas. And she is, gosh, I'd have a long list of things to say about this woman, but I'm going to try to sum it up as quick as I can here, and otherwise that'll be the whole entire podcast. But over 35 years of experience. I know Kelli from being another, I don't like to use the word guru, but another icon in the fitness industry that's really made a tremendous impact on me, as well as a number of other folks who have just followed the call and have wanted to coach. And she's a speaker. She's a three-time now #1 best-selling author, entrepreneur, fitness wellness expert, consultant, health. Gosh, these are all things I use as descriptions for myself all the time here. And it's like, yeah, she's done it all. Been on every media outlet a bazillion times, and I'm talking like NBC, ABC, CBS. I mean, like, I don't know. We can't even get the whole list in here, but probably been on it. And has probably been back several times. But your focus these days, and maybe you can reiterate a little bit on this, but you're helping people live a meaningful and authentic life in spirit, mind, and body. That is your commitment. That is your calling. That is your truth. And how you show up in the world as a parent, as a successful, brilliant entrepreneur, and I'm always impressed with marketer as well too. So you've branded yourself brilliantly and position yourself in the marketplace so that people can find you that need your help. And maybe tell a little bit more about what you're up to in the world today, because I could probably just go on and on and on. So.
Well, Glenn, I'm so happy to be here. I'm thankful we reconnected. We've known each other for several decades in and out of the realm of fitness, nutrition, wellness business. So it's just an honor to be a guest on your podcast. And thanks for all you're doing to bring this to the world. And yeah, I guess if I had to give the cliff notes, it's been a blessed career for sure. No one has the story they thought they would, but it's up to us to make the best out of everything. So if I had to break it down, the first 14 years, I owned and operated health clubs. I managed corporate fitness centers, writing, speaking, corporate, that kind of stuff, founded a school. And then the next journey of about 14 years, I was speaking, consulting, editing, boot camps, network marketing, all those things. And then the next real turning point for me happened when my husband of 25 years came home and he said, my commitment to our marriage is 0. And he left. And that was sort of my thing. And it really floored me. And it wasn't that I didn't have hard things that happened to me before that. I mean, I had been in car accidents. My dad passed away. My best friend died of cancer. Life just has some struggles. But this was the thing for me because my identity was so lined up in being a wife. So it took me to my knees, emptied me out, made me question everything in my life. And I went on this 3-year, what I lovingly refer to as a sabbatical. And it really was, how do I make this pain stop? How do I never do this again? And how can I create a vibrant new bonus life? And so on that journey, I did all the things. I went to the conferences, I hired the coaches, the counselors, I went on the retreats, read the books, TED Talks. I mean, I did everything that I could. And eventually, about 3 years later, I felt like I got to a place where I was able to put it behind me. And I remember the day, I remember the moment, and I was like, okay, now what? And I really felt led to help walk other people through this journey of grief that even with all the years of professional development and degrees and certifications and experience that I had, no one had ever really showed me this cycle of grief and how to get through it. So from that, I created a program and it helps people to get through from that shock all the way to how do you get to a place where you can readjust in a healthy way and possibly even help others. So that's what I've been doing for the last several years, among other things. But that's really my soul as a soul coach to help walk people out of difficulty and into a new just bonus life that's vibrant and brilliant and exciting.
Wow, that's for me. I feel the heaviness piece of it, of like you have this really well developed, I mean, incredible, untarnished like identity so stacked high. And then the second half of life, it comes in, it's like, all right, we got to take down those sandcastles and we've got to sculpt something new. Something new wants to be created. This next chapter is like, okay, you have to let go of these things, beliefs, all these ways that have been your nature, at least as you thought in the world, but it was really like a clean house process. And you being a coach and an expert like myself, where you read every possible book on this, and you're like, I'll learn from the best, I'll go after, and I gotta solve this riddle. And then here you are in this holy fuck moment of like, I'm completely been all in and invested in this way of my life and path for me. And now there's this work that I have to do in the world, that I'm not going through this just for me. I've gone through this experience for others. And as coaches, it's like, gosh, what do I need to learn from this so someone else doesn't have to suffer as deeply, or I can shine light on their unique path and they can find their way. Because I know for me, when I went through a really difficult breakup, and it just kind of took everything out at once, and I couldn't get back what I had. There was something new that was being birthed. Is that that process of many deaths and rebirths throughout this life. What I think our audience and myself, I'm curious about what it's like when you go through. I don't think of it as like a midlife crisis. I look at it as like an identity crisis, and it's not the thing you want. You're like, sign me up, but it's probably one of the most magnificent things that can happen to us, is to go through this process of disconnecting, detaching from this well invested and developed and honed and harnessed identity. But maybe share a little bit about what you came in contact with when the tears and the heaviness and the moans and all that stuff, you start to get a little bit of a gap in between that, and you start going, okay, I'm still here. What's next? Like what's trying to happen here? Like, maybe talk a little bit about that. Let's go back in time to like that juicy period, because you probably can have a different relationship and a different meaning to it now versus like one of these.
Absolutely. So the moment for me was when my husband came home and said that basically I'm blowing up our family. My initial thought was, I just ruined my kids' lives. And at the time they were 16 and 17, junior and senior in high school, and, critical time, hard enough already without this blindsided news. And my goal was to get 2 kids successfully in college. And the day that I did that, I had a freshman and a sophomore. They were at school. I had their tuition paid. They had cars, they had computers, they had cell phones, they were doing their degrees, they were doing their sports. And I came home, I was like, like, it just felt like, okay, like you could take that first breath. The kids are going to be okay. You did as best you could. And when I was like, now what? And when I felt that moment, like, you need to help other people, I sat down for 4 months and I looked at what were the things over the last 3 years that really moved the needle for me. And the very first thing, and I didn't learn it in this order, was identity. And then it was forgiveness, and then it was renewing your mind, and then it was having a new purpose. It was self-love and gratitude. It was divine health, abundant wealth, and then what I call joy, resurrection, and celebration. So I started chapter 1 with identity, going, okay, my identity was so wrapped up in being a wife, it almost killed me when in a moment that went away. And using divorce as the example, and you can use any grief, when you're getting divorced, it's called a major life event for a reason. A lot of things are happening. Your family dynamics are changing. You're probably moving. Your kids might be changing schools. You might be changing jobs or going back to work for the first time. It might be, all of a sudden your friends were all couples and now you're disconnected from that. Maybe your church changed. But so there's just so much change going on. And if your identity is wrapped up in the neighborhood you live in and who you're married to and all those things, you're rocked. I mean, everything that you thought was your reality is now in a moment just gone. So it made me go, who am I really? And I had to really turn to my faith. And I started having what I call these heaven encounters, where I'd never had a panic attack in my life, but I found myself like I ground my teeth down in a 6-month dental visit where the dentist was like, "What did you do?" I mean, like flat. And I mean, the flesh of my nails were just grinded, and I was holding my breath, and I'd never been more stressed. So I had to figure this out. So I would just to calm myself down, breathe, and imagine I was in heaven. I'm like, okay, if you're in heaven, what would that be like? If that's the best thing that I could imagine, furthest from the victim place that I'm in now, how do I get there? And I would just go there and start to ask questions like, God, how do you see me? And what I found was that God didn't see me as a failure, even though I felt like a failure. So in these time and in having these encounters, it helped me to realize where my identity really was and whose I was. So whatever that might look like for people, I know there's so many different ideas about faith, but I just hope that everyone believes there's something bigger than them. Because if I'm all there is, if the world is limited to my brain and my body and my emotions, we're all in trouble. So I'm like, yes,
Well, I love how
there's
you
something.
point that out. If I'm limited to my brain, my emotions, my thoughts, all these things that are constant, they're in constant flux and they're moving through. And then we don't necessarily have to entertain everything that's moving through us as the law, the rule, and that maybe we sometimes give too much stock to that versus to something a little more mysterious beneath things, that there's a higher intelligence at work. And that when we get kind of caught up in just the data processing of putting stuff in through our mind or that whatever it's spitting out, that we're held. There's something greater than us at work. And yes, we've got to deal with thoughts. We've got to deal with emotions. We got to make the right, we got to start making some good decisions and start moving in the new direction. But there's also a supporting piece that's like, maybe got half the battle or more for you. There's a degree of support that's like, okay, yes, I've got to do my part. I've got to show up. I got to explore and be curious and in a certain sense, analyze my behaviors, my choices, my thoughts, what I'm engaging with on a regular. And then at the same time, if I can just do my part, whatever your spiritual beliefs are, there's a helping hand. Like, what if we can believe, and it's not a foolish belief, to believe that there is, I love, there's a movie called the Golden Compass. It was like a kid's movie back in the days where each person came with like an animal, that was kind of like, this guy's bad. We should don't do business with him, or we should, or this, like we should go this way. That there's another aspect with us that's guiding us. And for myself, and maybe for yourself, as coach, as teachers, we reach out to other teachers and experts. We hire other coaches for specialized strengths. But when you go through this identity crisis and we start to reach out a bit, there's, as my style of coaching has changed throughout the years, and perhaps yours as well, as you might share, is it goes from, here's what I do, and here's what you can try this out and see how this works for you, to looking within and finding the wisdom's in there. And the only reason why we get a hit of resonance with someone else because it's existing inside us. And so the journey for me going through an identity crisis was about pausing, slowing down, and where I normally would reach out, I would try to like turn towards the sensations that I was trying to run from and avoid, and what was going on inside myself. And I started to be curious and say, all right, these things have been visiting me for my whole life in some way or another. I might as well make friends with them and investigate them and take a more playful attitude with them. And then I could be calm while being with discomforting sensations in the body, feelings that were moving through me. And so my trust started to go back to here, like, okay, what's wanting to happen here? Why am I going through this? Maybe there's some divine reason for this lesson. And I could have a little more I give my compassion and detachment with other people on their roller coasters and stuff when they come with their traumas and challenges. But how am I being with myself? Like, what's going on with my hypervigilant, protective the self-critic? Can I quiet and soften those aspects. I love that saying, don't beat the willing horse. It's like, okay, wait a second, Glenn, you're doing your best here. You're trying to figure this out. You're participating, you're showing up. What the curiosity starts to be a little bit less out here and a little more in here, as far as like, okay, I don't really need to change things outside of myself, all the challenging circumstances. I just need to get a reframe between my ears and what's going on in my heart space and how I'm relating to things. And that's where like the work began for me. Like I'm like, oh, this is the work that the only work that I can do, no one else can do, and I've got to do it. And maybe, I don't know, share maybe a little bit about some of the things that were percolating up in your process of coming to these this kind of a formula. It was kind of like your ladder to climb out and to rebuild, you know, the resurrection. So maybe share a little bit about, you know, maybe the little bit deeper into the details of what was going on for you, and you were having these aha moments of like, okay, I'm on the right path. This is okay.
Yeah, you said so many great things there. Thanks for sharing that. I felt like be still was the thing that I kept hearing. And it was the most frustrating, maddening thing for me, because I'm like, I'm not a still person. I'm a doer. I'm a runner. I'm a high D. I'm the lion. I'm red. I'm the square. Like, give me any test. And I'm like the achiever. Like, what in the world? Be still. But it was what I needed. And it wasn't like God's like, hold on, I can't catch up to you. You know, you're running too fast for me. It's like, no, you need to be still. You need to do the deep work. You need to reset, reframe. And had this not happened, you know, this divorce for me, there's a lot of things about myself I wouldn't have realized. There's a lot of strengths I wouldn't have that I now have. There's courage and boldness that I have now that I wouldn't have had before. There's resilience that I built that I never would have had before. I would have just been sort of limping along, striving through life. And I never thought I would say it. And it's still almost a little hard to say, but I can now say, I'm glad it happened. And I never in a million years, through all the tears and the sobbing and the ugly crying, and would have thought that. I mean, the first year was unreasonably difficult, from being served divorce papers on my birthday, to having our case reopened on Valentine's Day, to getting the final papers on what would have been our 25-year anniversary, to him getting re-engaged a month later, remarried a few months later. And those were just a few of the it was like every day felt like an assault. Where it was just, the person who leaves has been thinking about it on average for 2 years.
Isn't that
Could be
crazy?
longer. 2 years.
Yeah.
So they have a massive head start. They're already thinking like what I'm going to say to my friends, and what I'm going to say at work, and how I'm going to tell my family, where I'm going to live. And the person who gets blindsided is like, what? So you're a little bit slower in the healing process.
And you know, one thing to add to that is that, you know, when someone, you know, you separate physically, but there's the physical body, the spiritual body, the emotional body, the mental body. Like, you know, that's how I experienced when we've had breakups, even when we were younger. It's like, okay, it's over, but now I got to wait it out until it's like really over. It's because these different bodies are at their own pace and their own rhythm. And like you said, you get notice. They've already done this processing and kind of try to move all the chess pieces correctly for their best interests, and because you're going to be separating. And then you're left with not just the shock, but all these different systems. Everything's trying to like catch up and reorient and get some type of ground in no ground. You know,
Yes.
and that's, so yeah, keep going. So
I was really slow to accept that this was happening. And what I have found, and I help my clients with, is the ones who can accept it the faster do better. And you know, people, like when they walk in a room, you can feel their energy. If they're like bitter, angry, depressed, like wherever it is that they're stuck, you feel that energy and you're like, wow, how long has it been? And they're like, I've been divorced 9 years. And you're like, ooh, okay. So you need to really accept where you are. And the quicker you can do that, the better. So for example, for the first 8 months, when I moved into a new place, I kept my clothes in half the closet. And I parked my car on one side of the garage, and I kept half the vanity open, thinking, maybe he'll come back. Maybe he'll come back. Like, you know, God, you're so big, you can do anything. And it wasn't allowing me to move on. And I stayed really bitter and really depressed for a long time. And it was myself burning my own self. I mean, I was like holding my own feet to the fire, punishing myself. And it was just silly that I
It's crazy because
wasn't.
like they're off in Hawaii, not thinking about you, and you're over there like in hell, going like, like all that burning, and it's not affecting them in any which way. But you're
No, having a
sticky.
great time.
Yeah, you're just getting stickier and stickier, and so,
Ducked
yeah.
and
How do
stopped.
you? So maybe like in that place there, like when does like that realization kick in of for me it was like I'm fighting the good fight with things, and I had to have a lot of men in circle reflecting back to me like we see you as this warrior, and the new warrior, the peaceful warrior, has to let go, to surrender,
Mhm.
like, okay, this is what I have control over, my perception and my um, ability to lovingly accept what is going on, to not just fine, but actually like, okay, it is what it is. And my resisting is what's persistent. And so, yeah, how was your experience of kind of in that sticky place, in that uh, hopeful and feeling threatened, by everything?
One of the last parts of my healing was forgiveness. And I had said the
Yes.
words, I forgive him. But then something would happen to be like, oh, like there's still that wedge in there. There's still that, thorn just stabbing me. And I'm like, you haven't forgiven. You haven't forgiven. So I sat down for a full weekend and I was like, I am not getting off this couch until I feel better. And I'm not angry and I'm not bitter. And so I read a book called Forgiving Forward that someone had given me more than a year earlier that was actually signed by the author. And I sat there through sobbing tears, and forgiving him wasn't actually as terrible as I thought. Forgiving myself was the biggest part.
Yes.
And I had to stop torturing myself, stop seeing myself as this, miserable failure. And when I was finally able to release that, it was palpable. I mean, I could feel like, whew, like I'm just lighter. And I really did just give it up, cast it away, let it go, and didn't keep beating myself up anymore because where I wasn't serving me out. This wasn't supposed to happen to me. I was the good girl. I did everything right. Like none of that was helping me. And none of it was obviously 100% true. I also needed to hold up the mirror and say, what was my part? It wasn't 100% him and 0% me. Now, if you heard my story, it was very unfair. You would cry for me, but even still, I had to go, you know what? You were an enabler with a capital E. For 25 plus years, you enabled that man. And I was also became a control freak because what happens is a lot of times you get into opposite ditches. So because he was very irresponsible, foolish, I became hyper responsible, controlling. And so now you've got two people in two ditches and it's no fun for either one. And that led to more perfectionism. And then in that, I was like, you know what? It couldn't have been fun to live with someone who was a perfectionist. It just couldn't, and so I had to go and peel back every layer of what was my part. I need to own it and I need to stop it and I need to never bring it into the future. And so I really worked on correcting all of those things. And all of my relationships became better. My peace is literally never leaving me. What I decided was to live what I call a pre-decided life. So I decided that weekend in that moment that I'm not going to be someone who judges. I'm not going to be someone who's self-critical. I'm not going to be a victim. I'm not going to let the government, the economy, politics, whatever affect me. I'm going to go out and do my best to make a win-win every single day. And so I just came up with all these things about how I wanted to live my life, that I want the light inside me to shine all the time. My peace is way too expensive and I am just not giving it up. I'm not going to let someone who cuts me off on the road,
You're not
ruin
giving any of your power away to anything
no.
externally. I know we know that from being, even you think back to like the earlier stage, just being a fitness junkie. And it's like, I don't care whether it's raining, like if the weather says it's going to be a white squall, snowstorm coming in, I'm like, I'm going to go run at that time, because I want that challenge or that edge. But what you're sharing here is kind of like, I'm responsible for my light, like I'm responsible for my feelings, my there's no more this person did this to me, and it's I'm responsible for everything that's occurring. So I have to take on a greater responsibility for how I want to experience things. Is not out there, it's in here. And
Right.
that
And from that, I came up with what I called my to don't list. And I'm like, okay,
don't list.
my to don't list. I'm gonna to don't be a victim. I'm gonna to don't like stop telling my story. Not everyone needs to hear my story. Um, I'm gonna, not be in chaos. I'm going to, when I got divorced, I was in a beautiful neighborhood, $1 million neighborhood, gated golf course. I mean, it was just a great place to raise a family. But at the time that I got divorced, there were 110 homes in that neighborhood. 10 of my friends were also getting divorced. And so I started to watch what everyone did. And when you're in that much pain, you're going to do something. So you might run into the arms of another man or woman. You might escape with travel. You might turn to wine. You might isolate. You might, there's so many things that you can do. And having the health background and just being as super disciplined as I was not going to allow myself to harm myself in any way by running to another man or starting to drink or escape or I did do some isolation, but it was really intentional about doing a deep dive.
Yeah,
And, obviously COVID hit and all of that kind of contributed to a lot of alone time, but I
I can relate
used
to
the
that. I did
fact.
the very same thing. So it was just
Yeah, I mean, COVID divorce was definitely tough. The women that I'm coaching that have, all going through that. But I just made decisions like I'm not going to overcommit. I'm not going to overspend. I'm not going to. So I just kind of made these boundaries to guard my heart and to be in a healthy place mentally,
very smart.
emotionally, physically, spiritually. And so I wanted to help other people do the same thing. So these are some practical things like creating that to don't list, pre-deciding that this is how I'm going to live. My piece is too expensive. I don't have cancer. I don't, all these things. And if something terrible happens, I'm not going to let it escalate. I'm going to go through it and not get stuck or stop there. And so now when something happens, even if it has to do with my ex-husband, I don't fall as long, as deep, as hard, as fast as I used to. Now it's just like a blip where before it was like, oh, it might take me 2 weeks. So like, what do you mean he's married? What pictures all over social media of him and his new wife? And, me and the kids found out on Facebook and for like 2 weeks, I was like, couldn't function. And now I'm like, it doesn't affect me. It's a blip on my radar. I want nothing but the best for him. And that's really the highest level of forgiveness when you can not only forgive the person, but bless them in the area that they offended you. And so I'm like, happily ever after, till death do they part. I hope they make it. Because what good is it to, just eat myself alive sitting here watching their social media or wondering, I mean, we have a choice with everything we do. Everything has a consequence. We can get healthy or not. We can attract the right people or not. We can make good choices or not. We can struggle. So it's up to us what we do with the struggle. The struggle is going to happen. That's just a part of life. No one's
Let's talk
getting
a
to
little bit
like,
about that. Let's talk a little bit about the struggles now. When you have people that come in and they see the body of work you put together here to really help people get resourced. Now you and I come with these very super disciplined backgrounds. So we're like, okay, this is what you got to do. You got to get after that, and work your process. But a lot of folks, and why we're very busy is a lot of folks are very much engaged in the disassociation or the distractions or the quick fixes. They're not thinking necessarily the long game because there's a lot of hurt, and there's a lot of pain that they're wanting to move from. And as you found, because you found you're like, all right, I got to turn towards the pain and dissolve what's existing, living inside me, versus I'm go out here with the harsh critic on other people, start projecting and trying to feel better about myself, or I'm going to go get peace of mind in this person. But it's like, okay, it's really the work is inside, the deep work. How do you get people who are so used to and conditioned from our society to have all these external variables that give you some good temporary soothing? How do you, when I know I'm wired a certain way, you're wired a certain way, and folks come to you like you're a superhero and that they can just somehow by being with you get some of that to rub off. But you've got to kind of come in there fierce and pierce that that illusory world they're kind of got caught up in. And how, like, what are some of the ways you are able to reach your audience and help them lower their guard, get off the fence, and want to do the deep work? I mean, I love deep work. I love deepening connections with people. I don't do well in the superficial realm, and what is it that you're running into and that you're finding is being so helpful and supportive and encouraging for a lot of folks coming, through the divorce? Because like you remember being like, and like it's just, you're just can't help but be, initially reactive and sticky for a period of time.
It's interesting as a coach, this has absolutely made me a better coach. So when I was just first starting to tell friends that I was getting divorced and I just couldn't hide it anymore. I mean, he moved out, the house was for sale. I mean, after a while, you're like, okay, I can't keep this a secret. And friends would go, he did you a favor leaving. You will not miss him. You're going to love being single. And I was like, like, I don't want to be divorced. And I thought that you're just mean and cruel because I wasn't ready to hear that. Now I'm like, he totally did me a favor. So being on the other side, like I've got this dynamite power now. I know what it's like you can get through it. But I have to be empathetic to that pain when you're lonely and you're panicked and you're in fear and you're just searching for answers and you're in denial and you got emotional outbursts and you're, all the things. It's like if you help someone lose 100 pounds, you go, do you remember the guy who was 100? And they'll go, oh, I'll never forget that guy. Like I remember what it was like to not fit in an airplane seat and break chairs and whatever. So what has helped me now, here's an example. I started a new client 2 days ago and, I have them fill out a profile. So I have an idea of, what the challenges are coming in. And one of her greatest things was that she was just feeling really anxious and stressed. So now being a health, fitness, nutrition, wellness coach, I'm like, oh, we got this. We're going to breathe. We're going to exercise. And I'm like, okay, no, I really need to take a spirit, mind, body approach to this. So as soon as I get someone's profile as a new client, I print it out and I just start reading it and I speak life over it. Meaning if it says she's stressed, I'm speaking peace, joy, love, kindness, goodness, whatever, if it's suicide, whatever they're thinking, I start to put the spiritual part of it on of like speaking life.
Versus
And then,
like the old version, like come in as a technician going like, okay, I got this. I've seen this before.
Yeah, this is my jam. We can do that. A, B, C, D. Here's the blueprint. Go. And then about 10 minutes before our first session actually starts, I really sit, like meditate on this session. I don't know this woman yet. I haven't met her, but I just kind of lay there and see what I receive about her and how the session should go. So I have some really good open-ended questions that I ask in each session. But for that one lady, for example, I just started 2 days ago, the impression that I got before we even started the session was she needed to create space physically and time that she could go someplace and get away and just relax and meditate and just have quiet time and to reframe things. And that's what she needed. She needed like a physical place in her house where she could go. And the second thing I got was that she needed to have a conversation with her family about boundaries because they were the ones who were contributing so much stress to her life. Her kids, and she's still with her husband. They're not separated yet, but the stress that was coming from them was unreasonable. I mean, they were just being just so dishonoring and belligerent and whatever. So I had those two impressions prior to going into the session. So I'm relying a lot on a spiritual sense as well. Yeah. And it went really, really well versus me just going, okay, here's what we do. This is the fitness part. So that's the approach that I take with my clients. And the question I usually start every session out with, I like to ask questions that make them think differently, is what would make this a great conversation today? That if we were to look back on this call a year from now, you will see it as a turning point in your life. And they're just not expecting that, but it makes them pause and really think about what is the most important, urgent thing right now. Maybe it's, not all the details, a very little thing that went wrong in their life. But let's get to a place where we can start to shift things. And so what would make today a great conversation? And it just gets them to kind of settle and think different. And so my goal is by the end of the conversation for them to feel peace, have a little bit of strategy when they leave, but also have hope and also move them past whatever the stuck place. And the stuck place is because they had some false belief. There was something that they believed about their situation that just isn't true, whether they think there's no hope or they're not enough or they're always going to be broke, or so, there's mindset things in there as well. And every coaching call is different.
What I also love about that is you're really providing in that container, that conversation of like feeling into and getting out of your head, like you're just dropping into your heart space and connecting all the pieces of wisdom that are within yourself and trying to see what you're getting to hit off. You're also giving them the question that evokes within them the self-empowerment. So it's like, hey, like it's okay to be here right now. And I found there's two things for me as a coach with clients. My job's to really love up on the parts that the hypercritical voice is thrashing on, that I'm there to provide a really loving container and space for that they're not accustomed to, because they've kind of, maybe they were berated on something by family members at one point and they've taken over the job and they just keep that harsh critic alive as a safety survival mechanism. And if I'm going to get this person to thriving, I've got to let them know that like, it's okay. And the second piece of that is birthing possibilities that might seem really impossible right now. And like, I'm here to like take the reins right now and believe until you take over. And so it's, we're gonna start to invite in possibilities that haven't been here. And then who would you have to become that maybe you're not today, but that we can evoke that aspect to start coming alive, which is, your highest self, your true self, to start coming through. And how would you live your life? Well, now that's where the messy work gets into coaching, why we have coaches, because, well, everybody wants change, but when it comes down to doing the work, it can be unraveling, because you might not be living the life you're meant to be living. You might be living a little bit flat, a little bit stale, or, it's easy when you're in the fire, but it's those little subtle things that we're just like, this isn't my best. This isn't my best life. I got one life to live here. I only got so many more Wednesdays left.
Right.
Is this how I want to spend them? Is this how I want to serve others? And what's the impact I'm having? We start asking these questions here, and then, this greater purpose is going to provide a fulfilling life, because it's not just about, us focusing on things aren't working and that we're going to get these tokens for our efforts, but it's about like the big picture. I mean, the work you do in the world is like, oh, wow, I look at the impact they're having on my kids. Often they're starting their paths, like the book, The Prophet, where you're the bow and they're the arrow and they're going to go places you're never going to go. They might go to Mars one day and be like, oh yeah, we went there for a weekend, that's, so when it becomes more than about ourselves, that's part of the healing process I found. And I'm sure with the work that you're doing with folks, it's like, hey, like, got it, my friend, you're going through some really hard stuff here. And this doesn't maybe present itself right now at this moment, but it might start revealing itself to you a bigger quest, something, a bigger journey, something remarkable that, hey, I might be able to, I can see this having been a coach for many years. Like, like I'm always giddy at the first session with a client, because I'm like, oh, I see where like what's going to open up for this person. And, they're in the suffering right now, but like, I'm not just hopeful just by random luck. I know they're going to transform this, and they need to have that person in their life to, they'll benefit from having someone that can see what's wanting to come through this challenging experience, that, it's like this problem now will have a solution that will lead to the next problem, to the next solution, and so forth. But, as coaches, we kind of come in because we've been through, you went through this incredible fire. I've been through incredible fires, that's why we can hold space for people and just say, like, you're gonna get to the other side of this. It's going to be okay. And it's actually going to be magnificent. But let's just work on okay right now. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love and agree with everything you said. And I especially love what you said about being present, because when people come in, we know from the first moment of conversation if they're living in the past, which is regret, or they're living in fear, which is they've gone so far into the future that they get themselves so worked up that they are in this panic and chronic anxiety. And we know people who watch the news are just inundated with things that put them in a place of fear. So even just getting them to be present is a win, because they'll calm down, they'll breathe, they'll actually start to feel. And then we can start to work on extending their vision into things that are exciting and hopeful. And that's why a coach is so important, because they do need us to encourage them and, kind of hold their arms up sometimes, like, it's okay, you got this. I see in you things you can't see right now. I'm going to work with you to help you get there. And this is about you. This is your journey. I'm just here to support and direct and help extend what's already inside you. Because I know you've got a great plan and, a great purpose on your life. It's just, how do we pull that out of you? How do we use the pain for purpose? How do we take that and turn the struggle into a passion?
Yeah, it brings you alive. Like I'm facing right now, I've always had a fear of heights and falling. So I went and climbed Devil's Tower, and I hired a guide, and I hired another guide to take me across. I went up to Telluride for the week for my birthday a week ago, and I went across this Via Ferrata, climbing across these rungs. You're 360 feet below you, and I'm like, I'm 220 pounds. I'm a big gorilla. It doesn't belong on a rock here. This is for like dangly, 120-pound characters. And I'm going to fly a helicopter this week, and probably I'm going to also do some skydiving and bungee jumping. And now the thing that's had a hold on me and has collapsed me and has me played small and limited in life is now bringing me to life, is bringing me a lot of freedom, a new level, a new degree of expression. So it's like, oh, what is that new language I'm going to be in contact with? What's going to open up for me by doing the deep work with myself and facing my fears, and not just trying to figure out a way to self-soothe and self-medicate. But collapsing is a part of the process. We collapse into something feels a little too much to handle, and then we make, for me, my fear of heights and falling was established in childhood, and I created a childhood strategy, and I dragged that childhood strategy into adulthood. And so you have this opportunity now. So I feel like when folks come through a divorce, they come to see you, they have an opportunity. It's like, you're sitting there kind of maybe trying to hide the smirk in some aspect of like, oh my God, this is going to be so juicy for them.
Yeah, for sure. And everyone's journey is different. Like, people ask me if I talk about dating. It's been over 4 years for me, and I'm still not dating. So it's not really something I'm an authority on. I haven't dated in 30 years. It's been a while, but I have enough to help guide them through that, because some people are ready right away. And sometimes the healing truly can come through that next relationship. But I help them to find their core values to make sure that they're not repeating, the same person just with a different face.
Trauma bond.
And yeah. Yep. So it's just so fun when you can help people, when they come to you with your problems, and you're like, okay, you have a choice. How's this working for you? Do you want to stay sad, frustrated, angry, depressed, guilt, fear, rejection, disconnected, low energy, survival, hopeless? Like, how's it working for you? Or are you willing to do something different with that? And, hopefully they do. And that takes surrendering, because you have this identity that's built up around, being a victim, or being in chaos, or being in drama or gossip, or whatever the fear is, a childhood fear. Are you going to hang on to that and never trust again? And, just keep attracting the wrong people, always feel rejected, unsexy, whatever the things are. Or are you willing to surrender that and really get present and get calm and breathe and like explore, adventure, push past those fears, those limits, and, drop the oar on the boat on the other side and just, try again. And are you willing? And if not, what are you afraid of? And is it a real fear? Can we break that down? Where did that come from? And I'm not a, psychologist, psychotherapist. I am certified as a mental health coach and a divorce coach and all the lifestyle stuff. But if it's something that's beyond my scope of practice, I would certainly refer it out. If someone was suicidal, wanted to harm themselves or other people, I would refer. But I really have had so much great success and fun helping people that I know I can get people further along.
Well, let's say this conversation really resonates with a listener, and they're kind of on the fence on like, I know I need to do something. I want to ask for help. Maybe that's even hard, just even asking for help. how might folks explore you online? Where might they find, there's so much, you've got so much stuff out there, but where would be a great place for them to start to just do a little research, investigate a little further, and then be able to reach out and contact you and say, I think this might be the person that could help me.
Oh, I would love that. Yeah, I have over 100 videos on this topic on YouTube. So they can go there and they can watch. And they're, like 6 to 9 minutes. So if you're feeling rejected or you're in grief or, you're worried about finances or any of the things, they can go there and watch over 100 videos. If it's a woman going through any stages of separation, divorce, post-divorce, breakup, just ready to be great or down in that victim place, I have a private Facebook group. It's called Intentionally Fabulous. So that's a women only page, but they can go there. And then my website is kellicalabrese.com. It's Kelly with an I, and they can go there and see all the things and get in touch with me. My books are there. The latest book that I have is called Success Habits of Super Achievers. They can actually get the ebook for free if they go there. And if they want a personal hand-signed copy of the book, Success Habits of Super Achievers, they can email me. It's Kelly with an I at kellicalabrese.com. Just pay for the shipping. I'll hand signed and send anyone a book who would like it.
Kelly, thank you so much for being here today, and our audience for listening in. Hopefully you got a lot of good pieces of wisdom that have come through that can maybe get you the next step, the next nudge of like, there's support out there now for you. There's whether it's Kelly or just know you're not alone going through stuff. There might be 10 of your neighbors about to put signs up for houses for sale, but there's always folks going through some similar aspects. And so at least at this day and age now, there are incredible resources. And I know Kelly's an incredible resource and on so many levels, but just get the ball rolling. So if you're in a sticky spot right now, just get the ball rolling. What's the next one thing I could just do today? I'm listening to this video and now I could use one thing maybe written down on my to-do list regarding this, or on my calendar, maybe move it for tomorrow or later in the week, but at least move forward with this awareness. Don't wait for another inspiring conversation because it might be a while. So right now, if you're feeling inspired, called to take some sort of action, take some sort of action, big or small. Just boldly decide to do something big or small that's going to help you bring in some new possibilities. They're waiting for your invitation and your openness and your availability. So I know Kelly was sharing about, not want to date for 4 years. I'm like, I can relate to that. I can relate to being like, hey, I'm not really available. I want to work on myself right now. I want to focus on things that bring me joy and bliss. And, someone else who's doing that as well, following their joy and bliss, that will come in. And so no matter where you're at in your life, there's always an opportunity to move to the next level, the next place. There's a new chapter unfolding, and this chapter is going to be closing. And so some of you is going to go forward and some of you is going to not go forward. So aspects of yourself that aren't going to be of service and help you and help others and serve at the highest level, there are things we have to let go of along the way, and that's okay. So that my invitation, again, is reach out, ask for help, do a little homework, do a little research, be at play in this process. Actually, it doesn't need to be another thing to do. It could be like, hey, this would be fun. Let me go explore. Let me go check out some of Kelly's videos here. And when I have some downtime later today, and I want to learn about a few, and she mentioned a few different subject matters, whether finances, just be at play with this. Like, that's what life's supposed to be about, is like, be at play. And then life will start to show up in a way that reflects back your intention and what you're trying to create now. Forget about what it is, what's going on, your circumstances, they're going on, but open up to new possibilities of what could my life be like, and see what starts to support that and shows up for you. So I'm going to leave us with that, but I just want to say thank you again so much, Kelli, for being here and everybody for listening in, and we'll see you on the next episode. But thank you, Kelli. We'll see you guys.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Glenn.
All right. Bye-bye.